All right, welcome to our deep dive today. We're jumping into a part of the law that, honestly, trips up more people than you can imagine. We're talking about something called a chattel mortgage, and we're going to find out how a simple, totally innocent-seeming decision you make about your own stuff could snowball into a huge legal nightmare. Let's get right into it.
So, let me just ask you this straight up. Picture this, you finally did it. You launched your dream business, a beautiful, brand new food truck. An incredible opportunity pops up, a huge festival, a new hotspot, but it's in the next city over. So you pack up and you go. Now, could that one move, that simple drive across a county line, actually be a crime? The answer, and this is going to blow your mind, is maybe. Yeah, it really might be.
Okay, to figure out why, we need to wrap our heads around this key term, the chattel mortgage. Now, chattel is just a kind of old-school, fancy legal word for any piece of personal property you own that you can move. So anything that isn't land or a building. Your car, a boat, expensive camera gear, that awesome food truck, yep, those are all chattels. A chattel mortgage, then, is just a loan where you use one of those movable things as collateral. It's a very clear promise. If you stop making payments, the lender has the legal green light to come and take that item back.
You know, the absolute best way to picture this is to think of an invisible leash. Seriously, the lender, let's say it's a bank, is holding one end of that leash. And the other end? It's clipped firmly onto your property, your car, your new coffee cart, you name it. Sure, you can drive it around, you can use it every day, but that leash, it's always there. It's this constant legal tether, a reminder that the lender has a stake in your property until that very last penny is paid off. And of course, every leash has two ends, right? In the world of law, the borrower, that's you, the person who owns the stuff and got the loan, is officially called the mortgager. The lender, the bank or the finance company who fronted you the cash, they're the mortgagee. Just remember, they're the ones holding the leash. They've got the right to yank it back if you break the rules of the deal. To make all of this super clear, let's just walk through a story. Think of it as a cautionary tale that shows exactly how this plays out in the real world. We'll call it Alex's fateful move. So, let's meet our hero, Alex. Alex is passionate about coffee, has a killer business plan, and to get things rolling, Alex takes out a loan. You guessed it, a chattel mortgage, to buy this gorgeous state-of-the-art mobile coffee cart. This cart is Alex's whole world, and it's also the collateral, the chattel, that's securing that loan. And you know what? Business is awesome. The coffee's a massive hit, people are lining up. But then, it happens. An incredible, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity comes along. A year-long contract to be the exclusive coffee vendor at a huge corporate campus. This is a total game changer. The only tiny catch, it's in the next province. Alex is over the moon. This is the big break. Totally focused on the upside, finding a new place, ordering supplies. Alex loads up the coffee cart, hits the road, and moves to the new city, totally pumped to start this amazing new chapter. It just feels like a smart business move, a total no-brainer to chase that success. What could possibly go wrong? But hang on, this is where we need to pump the brakes. Alex has been making every single loan payment on time. Not a single one missed. There was zero intention of cheating anyone. But by moving that cart across the provincial line without getting permission, did our well-meaning entrepreneur just accidentally commit a crime? Let's dig in and find out. Okay, to really see how this works, let's all put on our legal detective hats. We're going to break down the specific law that covers this exact situation. Article 319 of the Revised Penal Code. We're going to put what Alex did under a microscope and look at it through the very precise lens of the law to see if a crime was actually committed. For a prosecutor to make a case for this crime, they have to build it on three fundamental pillars. Think of it like a three-legged stool. If you kick out even one of those legs, the whole thing just falls apart. They have to prove the physical act, they have to prove the mental state, and they have to prove the specific circumstances that surrounded that act. We're going to look at each one. The first pillar is what lawyers call the actus reus. That's just a bit of Latin that means the guilty act. This has nothing to do with your intentions or what you were thinking. This is all about what you physically did in the real world. What were your concrete actions? So, Article 319 points to two very specific physical actions that are against the law. The first one is knowingly removing that mortgaged property and taking it to another city or province without getting written consent. And boom, that is exactly what Alex did with the coffee cart. The second illegal act is selling the property or pledging it, which means using it as collateral to get a second loan without getting written permission from the first lender and getting that permission officially recorded. Alex didn't do that, but you can see how it's the other side of the same coin.
Okay, but just doing something isn't always enough to make it a crime. The law needs a second pillar, the mens rea, another Latin term for the guilty mind. So now we actually have to try and get inside Alex's head. The law cares a whole lot about what your intent and your knowledge was at the very moment you did the act.
And listen, the standard they have to prove here is really, really high. The law is crystal clear that the act has to be done knowingly and intentionally. This means a prosecutor can't just say you were careless or made an honest mistake. Nope. They have to prove you are fully aware of what you were doing and what the rules were. It had to be a deliberate choice, not some accident.
So what does knowingly and intentionally really boil down to here? It's basically two things. First, you had to know that the property had a mortgage on it. You were aware of that invisible leash. Second, you had to be aware that you were moving it without the permission you were supposed to get. So for Alex trying to argue, oops, I totally forgot I needed to ask, well, that's just not going to fly in court. If Alex knew the cart was mortgaged, the law basically assumes Alex was obligated to know the rules of that mortgage.
All right, so we've got the physical act and the guilty mind. But even with those, it's still not a crime. That three-legged stool needs its final leg, the specific circumstances. This is the legal context, the set of facts that have to be true for this law to even apply in the first place. It's the framework that can turn a simple action, like moving a coffee cart, into an actual crime.
So first and foremost, the foundational circumstance is that a real, valid, legally binding chattel mortgage has to exist. Alex's loan? It definitely qualifies. And because that mortgage is in place, the entire legal question now comes down to one single super important idea: permission.
But, and this is so important, a quick phone call or a casual, yeah, sure, from some teller at the bank is totally worthless here. The law is incredibly picky about the kind of permission you need. The best way to think of it is like a golden ticket. If you don't have this very specific, formally documented ticket, then what you did, no matter how good your intentions were, is legally wrong.
And this golden ticket has a very strict checklist. First, the consent has to be in writing. Period. No way around it. Second, that written consent has to be physically written down on the back of the original mortgage contract. And third, that updated contract then has to be officially filed and recorded at the Public Register of Deeds office. This creates a public paper trail that no one can deny. And since Alex just packed up and drove away, well, Alex has a big fat 0 on this checklist.
So, based on our little three-pillar investigation, it is looking pretty bad for Alex. The act, the mental state, the circumstances, they all seem to be there. So, what happens now? Let's take a look at the consequences, find out why this law is so strict, and see what kind of penalties someone like Alex could be facing.
First off, let's ask the big question. Why does this law even exist? What's the point? Well, its entire purpose is to protect the lender, the mortgagee. Remember our invisible leash? When you move the property to a whole different legal jurisdiction without telling them, you've basically stretched that leash so far that they can't use it anymore. It becomes incredibly hard and expensive for them to find and repossess that collateral if you default on the loan. The law is there to stop their security, their investment, from just disappearing.
Now, in court, not every case is going to be treated the same way. The judge is going to look at things that can tip the scales of justice one way or the other. We call these aggravating factors, things that make it look worse, like if the coffee cart was super valuable or if Alex tried to repaint it or change the business name to actively hide it. But then there are mitigating factors, things that could really help Alex's case. For example, returning the cart the second the bank called, or offering to pay the bank back for any trouble it caused.
So, what are the actual real-world penalties? The court basically has two choices. Option 1 is arresto mayor, which means jail time, anywhere from 1 month and a day all the way up to 6 months. Option 2 is a fine. And we're not talking about a slap on the wrist. The fine can be up to twice the value of the property. So if Alex's car was worth, say, 50 grand, that could be a $100,000 fine. The court gets to pick one or the other.
Wow, this all sounds pretty bad for our entrepreneur Alex. But is the situation totally hopeless? Are there any arguments or legal defenses that someone in Alex's shoes could possibly make in court? Let's look at the potential ways out. There are actually a few possible lines of defense, and each one is basically designed to knock over one of those three pillars we talked about.
For example, a lawyer could attack that mental state pillar. They could argue you genuinely didn't know the property was mortgaged. Maybe it was a complicated inheritance or something. Or they could argue that you did get consent. It was just verbal. Now, it doesn't meet that strict golden ticket rule, but it could help prove you didn't have a guilty mind. The most common defense, though, is to argue you had no intention to defraud the lender. Alex could show bank records of continued, on-time payments as proof of good faith. And finally, the fastest way to lessen the damage is to just fix the problem. Returning the property right away or paying off the rest of the loan can be a really powerful argument for a lighter sentence.
So, all of this leaves us with one final, incredibly important question. In this world of invisible leashes and golden tickets, where a totally normal business decision can somehow become a crime, what is the #1 most important thing you, the borrower, can do to protect yourself? The answer isn't about becoming a legal genius. It's about remembering that that invisible leash is a two-way connection. It all comes down to two simple things that can save you from a world of trouble, and maybe even jail time. Talk to your lender and get everything in writing.